إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to MTA International Africa. We are coming to you from the Wahab Adam Studios in Accra. This is Islam and Science, and today we are looking at the topic of Jinn. This is a topic that has been controversial to some people, but today we would want to look at what science and Islam says about Jinn. With me in the studio to do the discussion is, to my immediate left, Murabi Ridwanullah Ahmad, a missionary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission in the headquarters Accra. And seated by him is Dr. Abdallah Munir Dawood from the Atomic Energy Commission of Ghana. Gentlemen, you are welcome.
Thank you very much.
The subject of Jinn is something that you often hear, particularly in Africa. Before we go into what science says about it, Murabi, I would like to find out from you, what is Jinn?
Actually, Jinn is an Arabic word. And then it is taken from a root word in Arabic called Jinn, which means that anything that is invisible, or anything that is secluded, or anything that the naked eye cannot be seen easily except with the help of a medium. So when we say Jinn, it connotes seclusions, invisibility, concealment, something in a place of hiding. That is what it means.
So Jinn is anything you cannot see with the naked eye?
Yes, except with an aid of a medium. Or anything, there should be a medium that can help the naked eye to see it.
Doctor, is there anything like that in science?
Yeah. Indeed, there are a lot of things like that in science. And listening to Murabi Saib, what I pick up from the meaning of Jinn are entities with, features such as discreteness, seclusion, or concealment. And these characteristics are attributable to certain living organisms, especially those in the micro level. So we have microorganisms that exhibit similar characteristics. They are discrete, they conceal, and they are also in seclusion, most often than not. So then what we can say is that Jinn can be attributed to these organisms that exhibit such characteristics. And not just those in the microorganisms, but also those in the macro, that is bigger organisms as well.
Yeah.
Yes. We also read a word that is Jannah, which means paradise. If you read the Quran most oftenly, it is described in the Quran that paradise is a place where there's a lot of trees, there's streams flowing, flowers, just a beautification of a garden. The same word, that Al-Jannah, is also sharing the same root word with Jinn, which means that a garden with heavy thick trees, which is used to describe paradise. And therefore we have many ways of using Jinn. When it is used in relation with human being, in Al-Munjid, that is an Arabic lexicon, it says that ma'azamahum means that those of the people who are in higher authority, which you can't easily go to them, except with scrutiny, or you have to write an application. They have to check you thoroughly before you have access to them. So in Arabic lexicon, it is used that way. So it is also used that when a baby is giving birth, at that time, because it's not open to public, at that time, that baby is called Jinn.
Okay. That's interesting. So they are not harmful creations that are walking about in darkness that can kill people.
Actually, from the science and philosophic point of view, they can be harmful.
Okay.
Like I earlier mentioned, microorganisms, mainly bacteria and viruses, are classified, under this family of organisms that are not seen easily or cannot be seen by the naked eye, except when they are subjected to, let's say, a microscope, a device that is able to, show them. So these bacteria and microorganisms such as, virus, fungus, germs, we all know that they can be harmful to human beings despite we cannot see them. And so when you get into contact with them by way of ingestion in your food, drinks, or by inhaling them or dermally absorbing them through the skin, they can harm you in so many ways. So they can be harmful, and we can also derive some good out of them.
What are some of the good that we can derive from them?
For instance, bacteria are used for so many things. In food fermentation, for instance, the fermentation process, bacteria are used to ferment food, to produce wines of different kinds, to produce vinegar, to produce organic acids. All of these things are chemicals that are used in industrial setups and in so many ways, and also in producing even other foods. They are also used, a bacteria, typical bacteria called lactobacillus. Lactobacillus is used in production of cheese and also yogurt. And these are also delicacies of people. And so there are so many things. We also use a virus, for instance, to do genetic diversion or diversity of to produce diversity in the genes of my organisms. And
really?
Yes. And in the early evolution, virus and bacteria play major roles in causing evolution and all that, in transferring genes from one species to another species, and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, we can derive so many benefits out of these kind of organisms.
That's really interesting to note. When you hear virus, what comes to mind is they cause disease like HIV, Ebola.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that viruses are also used in such beneficial ways. Murabi, you look at the Holy Quran, there are a number of verses you come across that tells us that the jinn was created from fire. And he's talking about viruses and microorganisms. How is this?
Yeah, it's true, because when we look at the Prebiotic Era, that is before even creation has evolved to this level, scientists made us understand that there were some bacteria that were created out of lightning or spark of flames or hot wings. For instance, the archaea bacteria. These bacteria were known to be created out of sparklings of light. That is what the Quran refers to this. And these were prebiotic bacteria before even human being came to existence. And they were extremophiles. They live in an environment where the temperature is very high, where the acidic level is very high, at the same time where there is hot springs. Wherever you can see hot springs, such bacteria leave that place in order to drive their energy for their survival. So if you check in the Quran, it says that وَالْجَانَّ خَلَقْنَاهُ مِنْ قَبْلِ مِنْ نَارٍ سَمُودٍ. That, and the Jinn, we have created it before from a sparkling of fire. But a verse preceded that human being was created from a clay. But before human being creation, we created the jinn from a sparkling of fire. That tells us that even before the existence of human being, bacteria were the first things to be created. And archaea bacteria are perfect examples that drive their energy from that lightning.
That's interesting. That's really. But we do hear that in Islam, you have various hadiths saying that you should protect yourself from the jinn and all that. But Doctor did mention some very good things that the jinn is used for.
Yes, it's true.
How do you reconcile these two?
It's true, because in everything, Allah made us to understand that He has never created anything out of just wasting time or not for good. So that tells us that every creation has its purpose, but when it is not used at the right thing, for the right purpose, there it tends to be a harm. For instance, in a hadith, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam made us understand that when we are going to sleep, we should cover our utensils, we should close our doors. Even where you are to sleep, if you spread your bed sheet, before you sleep, you have to clean the bed sheet. And we should keep our children intact. That because these are the places where the jinns roam about. That tells us that the germs and the microorganisms, when we leave our utensils dirty and uncovered, it will go in. And when we take it inside, it will harm ourselves. That means that when it is not meant to go inside your body, but it have its access into your body, it can be a harmful thing. But when it is something that is transmitted, like the fungi, they use it for penicillin, which we use in curing many other sicknesses within the body. So that is the best use of it. But to take that original fungi from its raw state, which is transferred into penicillin, and take it like that straight into your body, then it will be something very harmful. So the Holy Prophet also said that dwelling places of jinns are in cow dungs and bones. So we shouldn't use it to clean ourselves. Like those days, there's nothing like toilet roll paper. So people would hardly take any hard object to clean themselves. And we all know cow dungs, they produce bacteria. And we also know that fungi also, they attract their nourishment from organic matters, decayed organic matters. That is why fungi will get their nourishment. Once you use it, it will have contact with your system and go to places where it's supposed not to be and can cause sickness.
That's really interesting. So the reason for us not to use the cow dung and the others is not because they are these mysterious creatures.
Of course.
That we attribute to as jinn.
That's superstition. Yes. Some people think that jinn is just something that is confined within a small thing. You bring it out, then all of a sudden it becomes huge and start producing things out of thin air. That is a wrong perception, but rather the Quran is drawing our attention. If Muslims were to study the Quran and understand it well, then Muslims should have produced the greatest scientists in the world, because the Quran draws our attention to deliberate on the verses and try to do more research, like we will be discovering these things. But we attach superstition, and that superstition block that aspect of our mental development, which can lead to the discovering of all these things.
Yeah, I can see Doctor is nodding the...
Yeah, I'm nodding because listening to Mary's side, he has listed a lot of things that, are scientific, contemporary science, and drawing his inspiration from the Holy Quran and from the Hadith, fascinates me a lot, in the sense that the Holy Quran was revealed some 1400 years ago.
Yes.
And it has made, assertions to some of these things that contemporary science is now discovering. Okay. So it means that, like he said, if Muslims are to pay particular attention to the Quran, then we would be the frontiers of science and science discovery. So, particularly about, this bacteria that I mentioned earlier. It is a typical jinn. If you look at the features mentioned by the explanation given to the meaning of jinn, it's a typical jinn. And yet, because the Muslims have misconstrued this thing to be a sort of a monster or a wild creature. Of course, they are creatures and they can be harmful, but they are not the creatures that we are told they are, like, dwarves, some creatures having, wild-looking, superstitious creatures and all that. That is not what the Quran was talking about. It was talking about this bacteria. And the Quran also made an assertion about creating jinn from fire. This is also perfectly, conforming to what science is describing now, because we know that temperature played an important role. It is a most important physical parameter in evolution. Okay, its role was that it did a lot in the physiological mechanisms during the early evolution. And so, because some of these bacteria are described as thermophiles, that is, organisms that are able to thrive in high temperatures, that is, temperatures beyond 100. And when you say temperature is beyond 100, it means that it's beyond boiling. Okay, they can thrive in this temperature. And anything that can withstand such an intense heat would mean that it's created, or it has its genesis from heat. And so it rightly, conforms to that.
That really confirms what the Quran says.
Yeah.
So let's go to the public and see what they say about the jinn.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about jinns, and back at high school, there were times that people behave abnormally, and when you ask, they tell you that the person is possessed by a jinn. Well, per what I heard about jinns, they are invisible and human in nature. They also appear in the form of other animals, like cats and something of that sort. And that they can see us, but we don't see them. And then they are also able to take possession of human beings. And when they take possession of you, and that happens when maybe, let's say you mistakenly pour water, or you intentionally pour water from maybe a high building or something, and then it touches it, or I don't know how to express it, even whether it's it or when it touches the jinn, then the jinn reacts by taking possession of your body. And when it does that, the person that is possessed goes through a lot of stress and those things. But then with the recitation of the Quran and other verses, the person is relieved of the destiny.
Jinn is a creation. Allah created jinn as a created human being. And among the jinns, we have the good ones and we have the bad ones. We have the Muslims, we have the non-Muslims. When you go to surah in the Quran, you have a surah like Surah Jinn. If jinn is not recognized, why do Allah name surah by jinn? And then he explained that the jinn, they listen to what? They follow the Prophet. They listen to the Quran. Some of them, they follow, they believe in the Quran and the Prophet. And some of them, they don't believe in the Quran and the Prophet. So the existence of jinn is what? Is real. Jinn is there, and they are creation of Allah.
For me, I think jinns are certain spiritual forces that exist amongst us. And from what I've read, we have the good jinns and the bad jinns.
Interesting to see some of the views from the public on the concept of jinn. Murabi Sahib, you heard from the public what some people think jinn is.
When we accept the fact that jinns are also taken from microorganisms, then it tells us that the Holy Prophet level of cleanness, cleaning the body itself, tells you that the bacteria or the microorganisms within the surroundings are harmless to him. That is the first aspect. And the second aspect is our controlling our emotions. Because once your emotions are being controlled and directed in the right positive way, then it is said that you are taking control over those aspects of you which can also be classified as Shaytan. So if you even see in the Holy Quran, sometimes Jinn and Shaytan are interused. They are juxtaposed, used in the Holy Quran. Because sometimes when it is used in the direction of our emotions, this is how it is. Because these are thoughts that you can't just see them, but you can feel it within you. They exist within you, but you cannot just see it. And Allah says in the Holy Quran that He has not created the jinn and the man but to worship them, but to worship Him rather. It tells us that all these creations has its own purpose and none has power over the other. That is one thing. So if even those at the highest level, which cannot be easily assessed, are the jinns among the human beings, and those at the common level. But one thing is that the purpose of all of us, our creation, is to worship Allah. So if they say that Allah has revealed surah on jinn, why don't you also see them that Allah is addressing to those in authority in particular?
So that's what that surah is talking about,
Yes.
not supernatural creatures that can take possession. You saw the views from the public that these jinn can take possession of human beings and make them act in other ways.
For me, from scientific point of view, except maybe the way they look at it, but if you look at it deeply, yes, if a bacteria takes possession of you, that is when you get fever. That is when you get flu. Flu is a bacteria basically, and the manifestation of you or you being possessed by the flu is you getting fever, you getting sick, you getting malaria, etc., etc. So they can possess you. You can be possessed by these genes, but it's not superstition. That is what people must understand.
Okay.
This is not superstition. This is purely science. Science of the 1400 years ago.
So when you have cholera, it means that a jinn has possessed you.
Yes.
Is that what you are saying?
A gene of bacteria, a gene of virus. Okay, have possessed you. That is it.
For instance, those days, we have a sickness called the hay fever. The hay fever. When it wasn't recognized in our environment and it comes, you see that the person gains some extra strength and begin to do things with strength that even people cannot control. At that time, they will say that it's possessed by a jinn. But today, because we have recognized it scientifically and we got the medicine for it, hardly you see people running into the bush here and there.
Okay.
And the issues of hay fever is uncommon now.
That's interesting. Listening to the public and following all what we have discussed, Dr. Saib, I will start with you on your concluding comments concerning the topic of discussion today, the jinn.
Yeah, so in conclusion, what I would say is that jinn can be microorganisms, they can be microorganisms, that is even human beings, so far as they exhibit the characteristics that we have discussed earlier: concealment, discreteness, seclusion, because we know some humans like kings and queens are most of the time in secluded place. They are hardly seen in the public domain, and so they can also be described as jinn. And animals like even the snake. Snake is always in concealment. Snake is always in discrete areas. Okay, so anything that is fragile, most organisms that are fragile are most often than not in concealment. And also organisms that are dangerous or harmful are also mostly in seclusion or in concealment, because they move away from members of their community just to make sure that they are not harmed. But if you invade their territory, they in turn will harm you. So we have to be careful, keep good hygiene against bacteria and viruses that can, possess us and harm us.
Rabbi Saib, listening to all what the members of the public have said, can the recitation of the Holy Quran, that was one of the comments that came from the public, that recitation of the Holy Quran can save you from jinn. In your concluding comment, will you tell us that we should recite the Quran to save ourselves from the jinn?
The mere recitation of the Holy Quran cannot save one from a jinn. Rather, it's about following the principles of the Holy Quran. What you are reciting, what does it expect you to do? For instance, if the Quran, there are several rules that are there, and it is we are expected to follow those rules so that our way of living will be perfect. Even the Holy Prophet, considering the hadiths that are mentioned concerning all cleaning the utensils and all that, if you look at it, everything bounces back to what we call cleanliness, which means cleanliness of every Muslim life is being emphasized here. And even this is so much to an extent that the Holy Prophet says that at-tuhuru shatrul iman, that cleanness is part of faith, is half of faith. So that tells us that the Muslim community would have been the most healthy community if we follow the principles laid down by the Holy Quran and also read the sayings of the Holy Prophet and put it to practice. Then it tells us that there are a lot of bacteria and viruses that are around us, but we'll be immune of them. So mere recitation cannot save one, but Quran only gives an enlightenment to the understanding of your existence and how to be saved from it. So understanding what the Quran says is the most important thing.
It has been an interesting discussion on the topic of the jinn. And with me in the studio was Dr. Abdullah Munir Dawood from Ghana Atomic Energy and Murabi Ridwanullah Ahmad, a missionary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in Ghana. We are grateful for your time in the MTA studios here.
Thank you.
Viewers, thank you for watching your favorite program, Islam and Science. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu.